So let me talk about, anybody here been to the National Weather Center? Okay. Been up on the roof? So you've seen this? Okay. So this was a project that was started in 2010, I think. It was part of the ERA funding. Reed Kaufman, Petra Klein, Jason, Lee Fithian put this together. They spent about $16,000, I think. And you're going to see some pictures of it, but it's a pretty big installation. 1,280 square feet of anything is a lot. Okay, so the reason I say that is that I inherited this project. Reed left University of Oklahoma, went up to Kent State. Petra does weather. She doesn't do gardens. And Lee is off in Italy doing study abroad. And Jason's up here. So Jason still has a project going where we've got 4 scales under 4 of the trays. So he's got continuous monitoring. So when I inherited it, I thought, oh man, I don't have any money. I've got this thing up there, and we had this meeting with Berrien Moore, who is the dean of the College of Meteorology and Geography, and he's like he was part of the Nobel Prize winning, the climate change report. He's a big deal. So when we sat down in the room, he starts talking about the green roof. He says, I don't have a green roof. I got a brown roof. I got about 1 million people a year that come through this facility, and I've taken it off the tour. Oh, okay. Thank you very much. I got it. So I went into phase 2, which means that we started doing some changes. One of the things I discovered, I was not a green roof guy. I knew a little bit about green roofs, but I started reading, is that we're actually part of a Southern Great Plains group. So the published work from Bruce Dvorak covers these 3 green roof experiments. This is out of the National Wildflower Research Center. Here we are, and then Richard Sutton up at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. So this is what it looked like. First thing I did, I said, okay, I met a guy named Sam Minnick who runs Minnick Materials out of Oklahoma City. He provides compost, he sells Roof Light, which is an FLL approved set of growing medium. And Sam said, sure, I'd love to contribute. I'll give you all of it. And I said, well, I don't have the logistics to handle changing all this out. He said, that's okay, I got people. So on a Thursday morning, he brought his crew, and I snagged graduate students, and we unloaded all of these trays. So this is phase 1, which was the brown roof, which was a good experiment. They saw what would grow, but they watered by hand. And then it didn't work very well. So we unloaded all of it, and if I give you an idea of what it contained, because I thought, well, how much did we actually move? We moved about 23.5 yards of material. That's a lot. And then we put it back. So the first taking it all down on Thursday, we started with the 4-inch deep trays. Boy, we moved them, felt really good. And so we put 4 or 5 on a dolly, push it into the service elevator, go down from the 6th floor down to the dock, and then dump it into the back of the truck. And we got all those 4-inch trays done. We thought, feeling pretty good. Let's start on the 8-inch trays. Well, it turns out a 4-inch tray weighs about 140 pounds, and an 8-inch tray weighs 275. And we had 80 of them to do, and it's hot. This is June. So this is what it looks like. So here are the 4-inch trays on the outside, the 8-inch trays here on the center, and that's the crew when we got finished there. These are the ones that had been already up there for a little while, and those were the last 5 as we completed it. I recount this just because it was kind of a heroic effort done by volunteers. This is what the cross-section looks like. So here's your typical roof deck built up, and then the deck here. And so here are the 4-inch trays and the 8-inch trays. We don't have a weight loading problem. You know, the roof is actually used by the guys in the Weather Center to do all kinds of proof of concept. So every time you go up there, there's some new little whirligig, and they've got plastic Tupperware containers with stuff inside it and taped together, and you know. Another thing we did was I got Netafim drip irrigation donated. All of it donated by a former student of mine. So we proceeded to lay the drip irrigation in here. This is the box you'll see a little later. Here's Jason's scales in these 4 trays right here. And my objective was to use southern plains grasses and forbs. So here are the 8 species. Originally we wanted to plant them by seed, but we started too late in the season. So we wound up having to do some, buy out of New Jersey and out of Iowa. Whoever had it in June or late June, early July, and there aren't many suppliers available. So if this is from an interesting publication on pasture range plants, but this shows a 6-foot man, and this shows the depth of some of the grasses that we've planted on the roof. So this is a Cynotes grama, big blue stem, switchgrass, Indian grass, little blue stem. Those are what it's projected to do. So you can see that the switchgrass can, in good conditions, be 11 or 12 feet deep. And this is a range. If you plant it in really good soil, the difference between excellent, average, and poor range conditions. There's also differences if you mow it or if you're grazing it. So the grazing conditions, ungrazed, mowed at 3-inch height weekly, and then mowed at a 1/2-inch height, you can see the difference in the root formation. This is the way we laid it out. So this is 160, and that's 80 all in one end. The green is grasses, and the pink is forbs. Why did we do that pattern? Many green roofs are done where you actually mix all the seeds so that you have a kind of a mixed prairie effect, and then they compete with each other. I decided as a landscape architect I didn't really like the way that looked. So I thought, why don't we check how the grasses are growing or how the forbs are growing, and we'll do single species trays. So that's what we've done. And you can see there, every species is planted in 2 4-inch trays and 2 8-inch trays. So, and they're all irrigated the same way. This is another close-up. So here's, and the order of it was the order in which we received the plugs. So it was randomized based on FedEx delivery, which is as random as anything else. We've also done, for the benefit of the dean, a bloom calendar. So this is something we'll actually publish in the viewing room, so as people come to visit, they can look for the stuff that's in bloom. This sort of puts all of it together. And this was taken, maybe this was when? July? Late July, probably?
Actually, that's in September.
Really? Okay. So this is Mehdi Anvar, who's this is his final project as a landscape architecture student. And it was one of the tests for this was what happens if you plant plugs in July in the summer on the 6th floor of a building, and even if you water them, will they live? And I'll tell you, some of the forbs didn't live. We're having to replant them. So the irrigation system, we actually have 8 valves, and each valve feeds 2 20-foot sections. So you can see these yellow feeds, this 4-inch section there and 4-inch section there. So we can control how much water we're giving to each of those sections. This is just close up the valve box is down in there. Huh?
Space heater.
Yeah, and this end here, because it's so cold, we put one of those little activated space heaters hoping things wouldn't blow up. It got really cold on the roof, I tell you. Essentially, we're looking at the comparison of what happens in the 4-inch versus the 8-inch trays for the grasses and the forbs in terms of their growth. How much coverage will they have? We're monitoring how much water we're putting onto it. Here's some preliminary results. I'm not going to bore you with the statistics, but this is what Mehdi's doing for his final project. So he started in August, and so they've been in about 3 weeks. In September, you can see that some of them are really taking hold in here. Some of them have disappeared. October, they got a little bigger, and then by November, some of them are starting to brown out for the winter. So he's taken those and using AutoCAD, he's got an individual photo of each of those trays for all 4 of those months. And he's literally measuring how much coverage did you get out of the tray. And he'll have all that finished here in the next 2 weeks. Here's preliminary results. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it because we haven't spent, but here's your 8-inch, or your 4-inch and your 8-inch. He separated them by the strips or by whether they were massed together with 4 grasses in a block, or they were just 2 grasses together. Here's another form of that, and I'm not going to bore you with it. We'll publish out of that probably by the end of this year. I think we've got a publication on it. So this is phase 2 that I've just been talking about. I didn't talk about this section in the center. So here's your strips. This is grasses and this is forbs. The 16 in the middle, we said, well, let's mix it up. So whatever we had left over from planting the other trays, we moved them over into the center and planted them. In a random, all the grasses are planted in trays together and all the forbs together. So we're going to actually have to wait for them to come out to know what the pattern is. It suffered some during the winter. It blew out some of the irrigation. And phase 3 is, I'm going for biodiversity. Because if the Waldorf Astoria can have beehives on the 20th floor, then the National Weather Center can at least have habitat on the 6th floor. So what we've done is we've bought the appropriate species, and we're going to be planting those. We bought bare root out of Walter's Gardens up in Michigan. And we're going to be planting those starting this weekend and probably the next weekend. It's been too cold, so it's now time to plant those. And we'll see what the habitat looks like. The 4th phase has to do with the air conditioning. So these condensers here are dripping water onto the roof. It's not a lot, but it's steady. It actually grows. It's growing lichen along here. It's beginning to compromise the roof. And I actually met the guy whose roof is in there. It's a siplast roof. He said, really? I got to go tell the guy, I said, wait. Give me a chance to capture it. So those of you who have been to the OSU OKC facility, where they're capturing the rain, the water off the roof? That little fountain, that pond? They capture, in the middle of the summer, they capture 90 gallons a day off of that. I want to capture this and water the green roof. And if we can multiply that experiment, then one of the chief objections to irrigating green roofs, because we're using too much new water, can go away. because we're not going to stop air conditioning. Thank you. Any questions?
Are you measuring the temperature changes? I mean, how do you? is it
We're
one of the
going,
main benefits?
we're using the sort of your average weather temperature. At the Weather Center, you either get a fire hose, or you just go look up on the web and see what the weather was. Sometimes it's easier to do that. We had a big data mask that was capturing all kinds of data, but I don't have access to that. There's probably 3 years of data there from the phase 1. I can't access it yet. Yes, sir.
Are you finding that the survival from some of your deeper rooted plants is poorer in the shallower trays or greater in the deeper trays or anything?
I don't know yet. Nothing's, it's still so early in the season, things are just now beginning to leaf out. So stuff that we thought, well, that's dead, we get rid of it. No. So it's kind of amazing. When we changed that all to medium back last summer, we pulled some of the grasses that had blown in. We pulled them out, and they had root masses, the size of a basketball. Truly remarkable. So I suspect that diagram I showed of the various ones of the grasses, I'm actually worried about what happens in 2 years when the little blue stem fills the tray and doesn't have any more.
The fabric underneath the modular are pretty thick, the fabric that kept the old media that's thick enough to avoid the root goes through the pavers actually.